part of our violent crime response team. So with that, whenever local agencies call us, we will go out, investigate crime scenes, collect evidence, and then bring it back to our respective units for analysis. And then just recently, I was promoted to supervisor and technical leader. So now I have those additional duties. Supervisor duties are pretty obvious. The technical leader duties are making sure that equipment is up to date, properly working, ensuring that we follow all accreditation guidelines, and then also validation of new techniques or methods that may be coming up.
Thank you. Dr. Kern, will you go next, please?
Sure. So I've been an analyst at the U.S. Food and Drug Administration's Forensic Chemistry Center for the past 13 years. And my specialty is mass spectrometry with either liquid chromatography or ambient ionization sources. And so the Forensic Chemistry Center is actually the servicing lab for our Office of Criminal Investigations. So we actually do have officers that are FDA agents, but they're actually police officers. And so they'll do undercover buys, they'll stake out a warehouse and pick up things that might be ingredients that are going to be used in adulterated dietary supplements, or sometimes we'll even get things where someone's spouse is trying to poison them through their coffee or their insulin or something like that. And so it comes to our lab, and then we analyze it with a whole host of different types of techniques and put together a package that often goes to court.
Thank you. Dr. Valentin?
Hi, I'm a forensic scientist for the New York State Police at headquarters in Albany, New York. My background is as a forensic chemist. I started in the seized drug analysis laboratory. So I analyzed evidence for the presence of controlled substances, and I testified in court as needed. About 3 years ago, I was promoted to a laboratory management role. So now I work in quality assurance, where I lead learning and development. So internship programs, professional development, and of course, maintaining a robust quality management system.
Thank you. So our first question from the audience is, what are the challenges an international student will face if he or she wants to join U.S. government chemist job?
So you do have to be a U.S. citizen. I don't know of anybody that's, has a green card or anything like that.
I believe with the New York State Police, you can have a green card.
And then it's, for us, we are commissioned law enforcement, meaning we carry firearms and execute duties associated with that. So for us, you do have to be a U.S. citizen. However, there are other agencies around us that I'm aware of that green card is the bar that you have to meet to have employment there.
Okay. Our next question is, what is the most challenging aspect of working in government?
So for me, it's just how slow everything is and just how many layers of red tape that you have to go through to just get, even just to publish a paper in a peer-reviewed journal has to go through so many layers that like sometimes you'll actually get scooped. Even though you did the work like a year and a half ago, someone else will publish before you because it doesn't get reviewed by enough people for you to submit it to the journal. So things like that can be kind of disheartening. But I do understand that a lot of what we do, because it is involved in criminal cases, that we want to make sure that we're really doing a thorough job and making sure that we're not cutting any corners. So, we have all these multiple checks and balances. So I understand it, but sometimes it's very frustrating.
And for us, all the same apply. Money also can be an issue. We just went through that with COVID, so the state retracted funding in anticipation of revenues going down. We felt that directly. Since then, it's opened back up, and things are better than they thought. But that's a constant struggle. Slowness of everything, purchasing, ordering, anything is extremely difficult, and that's hard for the people on the bench, especially because a lot of times they need something to do their job better, and they can't get it in a timely manner.
Yeah, I think coming from a research background, it was a huge adjustment for me to go from do whatever you can to solve the problem to work within a very specific framework. And once I got familiar with that framework, I was able to find more satisfaction with pitching new ideas. And like we did a journal club that where we invited some researchers from a local university to come, and we did this collaborative game storming session, which was a lot of fun. Once I realized the framework within I had to work to make that happen, things started to fall into place, but there was definitely a learning curve there. And also I'd say with COVID, that has been a challenge for me personally because we've had to be on site throughout the entire pandemic. And so that's been a scheduling problem. If you have children and they're in school, it's, and then they're, remote. So I'd say that's been a more recent challenge.
Thank you. Okay, the next one is, how did each of you break into the government sector?
For me, I was approaching the end of grad school, and we were trying to kind of plan out life, I guess. Looking at postdocs and stuff, I wasn't sure. I knew that some of the ones that were offered, I didn't want to live in those areas. And then the path beyond the postdoc was unclear because I didn't want to go into the academic world. So I started looking around locally in Nashville. And honestly, this position just kind of fell in my lap. There was 2 openings, one for fireman tool marks, and the other was in toxicology. And I had to interview twice. The first time I got passed over for political reasons. Second time, I was able to get the job. And they asked which one I'd be better at. And I said, well, probably toxicology, but I really like guns. And so they gave me a job in the firearms unit. So really, it was just kind of luck, right place at the right time. But I did know some people on the inside, so to speak, as well, that were able to kind of pull back the curtains and tell me what the job was all about, and made me realize that that's actually something that I would really, really enjoy doing.
Yeah, for me, it was very much a situation of who I knew. Because I had gone to graduate school and was very close friends with the director of the Forensic Chemistry Center. And at the time I was in industry doing technical sales and support for a specialty chemical company. And I was doing a lot of traveling and I was really ready to make a different move. And I mentioned to him that I was going to possibly be moving to Chicago for another sales type job. And he said, come work with us at the Forensic Chemistry Center. And it was pretty much just a done deal at that point. And I would say that probably 90% of the people that we hire come with a personal recommendation. So it's really hard to just throw your name in a hat and not have anyone give you any kind of support or, give you a good recommendation that people are going to take, and appreciate because they know the person that's recommending you has done a good job there as well. So I think that's one of the nicest things. So if you know anybody in government, now you know us. So you could make that kind of relationship, or we do a lot of recruiting through different conferences, like PitCon is a big one that we go to, and the ACS. So, people have come and just spoken with me and networked with me that way. And we've actually hired people like that because we were really impressed with their personality as well as what's on their resume.
I think our next question is specifically for Dr. Valentin. is what are the biggest needs in terms of resources and skill set of employees for forensic science teams?
So the technical requirements are pretty much the same across the board. So based on our accreditation requirements, we have very specific technical requirements, and typically that's a bachelor's degree in STEM, in a physical science. And the appropriate coursework, of course, that would come with that. A graduate degree certainly helps. It definitely makes you more competitive. In terms of skills, I would say familiarize yourself as much as possible with forensics, and especially if you are interested in going into law enforcement, because it is a very specific framework, as I mentioned before, and a very specific culture that is different from the research culture. So a lot of people find it so novel and fun and exciting because they watch TV and they think, oh, it's going to be like that, and it's not. And familiarize yourself with your state. If you want to stay in the state in which you live, you may want to learn about if you want to be a CSI in New York State, that's reserved for law enforcement. So you actually have to become a sworn law enforcement member in order to be a part of the forensic investigation unit and respond to crime scenes. So I'd say familiarizing yourself with the culture. There are lots of resources, and I'll enter into the chat. There's a great website that you can use, which has tons of free webinars to help get you kind of started. And it'll also help you begin to broaden your network a bit, because the speakers have their information there as well. So I'm going to grab that and drop it into the chat.
Thank you. I am going to switch to the Zoom Q&A questions now. The first one here is, when preparing for an interview for a government chemist position, what advice do you have?
I would say for any interview, just be yourself. You don't want to, portray yourself as something that you're not. So people are going to like you for you. I think one of the biggest things where I work is it's kind of a smaller lab, and most people really will start straight out of school or grad school and retire from there. So everybody knows each other's kids. We go to each other's houses. We are a family. So we're always looking for, is this person going to fit in with the group? And by the time you make it to the interview, we already know that you have the technical skills, or you wouldn't be interviewing. So just try to be human, try to connect with people as much as you can.
And just to add to that, so for our interviews are panel interviews, which I was not expecting when I went in for my interview. So we do 1 hour interviews. It's a panel. And in my situation, I was offered a tour of the lab afterward because they were interested in moving me forward. I would recommend doing research, because there actually were some very specific questions that I was glad that I had done some research, especially on GCMS as it applies to seized drug analysis. One question I always ask at the end of an interview is, what concerns do you have about me as a candidate? So that I can walk out of there knowing where I stand. And if there are concerns, you can address them at that time.
That was a great question to ask. That's what I did on my first run through, and that was actually very insightful for me. One other thing I'll add is that at least if, and I'm not sure how it was at the other two labs, but for us, since we are commissioned, there is a polygraph exam and physical and all that sort of thing. So up front, be honest. Everybody's made mistakes, and if you lie about it, that's going to get you blacklisted. And then the other big thing that we get asked about a lot is, family. If you got family that have issues with drugs or alcohol or been in prison or whatever, everybody is judged kind of stuck with it. So be upfront and be honest and be human the whole way through, and that's what will help you out the most.
Okay, our next question. What skills, abilities, and personal attributes are essential to success in your job / this field?
For our agency and our unit in particular, you need to be driven and able to work on your own. We don't have a whole lot of micromanaging going on, so being able to live up to the standards that are set for you and carry out the job the way it needs to be done are of high importance. And then also a team player and somebody who's looking to serve. For us, with court and crime scenes and everything, you're going to end up making sacrifices. There is a reward at the end, but you have to understand that up front. And just coming in with that understanding that you may miss Christmas or you won't get to go home every Thanksgiving, that sort of thing, that's really helpful in the long run for your career.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. And just to add, for situations where your role might require you to testify, I think public speaking skills are some of the most underdeveloped. In terms of STEM, we only really do we only really usually do scientific talks if we're going to a conference or presenting, but we don't really practice speaking to lay people. So if you can explain some concepts, practice explaining concepts to your family members or friends who are not in the STEM field, that's a great way to start developing that side of it, because it's wonderful if you can speak about something up here. But in New York State, the average education level of a juror is, I think, 8th grade. So you need to be able to explain it across a broad range of educational levels and understanding.
Yeah, I think for our lab, it's not as, I guess, maybe life or death. I've never had to miss Christmas or anything like that. I have had to work weekends on a few times. But I would say that we get so many different types of samples that we really have to do a lot of intricate problem solving. We've had samples where it was an infant's onesie that he had vomited on, and we had to figure out how to analyze the vomit to see what was in there. And it turns out that his mother had been giving him heroin. So we were using a direct analysis and real-time ambient ionization source to look at that with mass spectrometry. But we've had a lot of just really weird different samples, bleach and eye drops, all kinds of just really weird things, so that it's not like every day you're coming in and just running the same type of prescription drug or something. So I think that's one thing that graduate school really helped me with, is looking at things differently and trying to think outside of the box.
Okay, our next question, what are some common career paths in your field?
So I'll speak specifically to our lab. So we have here in Albany, we have our headquarters lab, which has a broad scope of different disciplines. So we have seized drug analysis, which is where I was working or started out, and we have toxicology, firearms, trace evidence, bioscience split into DNA and serology. We also have DNA data bank. And FIU, Forensic Investigation Unit, they do our latent prints. Those are all sworn members. And then we have satellite labs throughout the state, which only have seized drug analysis and evidence receiving, which of course we have at headquarters as well. So if you want to become an analyst, certainly any of those laboratory sections would be viable options for you. So we have entry levels as forensic scientists or senior laboratory technician, depending on which section you're in. And then you can move into management. So then there's technical leaders. So those are also forensic scientists. And then we have supervisor roles. And then depending on the size of the section, we have, more layers of management as well. So there's that.
Or at TBI, the system pretty much mimics what New York State Police has. There are some additional opportunities for like being a firearms instructor or EVOC, emergency vehicle operations, doing instructing for that. But once you've hit the QA or the supervisory level, there's really not a whole lot of, there's nowhere else to go really. A lot of people, specifically in the firearms field, will put in their time, get some good experience under the belt, and then leave and do their own private practice. So they can bill astronomical rates and either reevaluate evidence or just do case file review, issue their own reports. And a lot of times you have more flexibility when you go that route, but you're also self-employed at that point too. So.
Our lab is fairly small, so pretty much everybody is an analyst. We have 6 supervisors, 2 branch directors, and 1 lab director. It's very, as I mentioned earlier, most people retire from there. So unless somebody retires, you don't typically move from an analyst to a supervisor and, of course, onto director. We do have some people that are admin people. We have IT people. But as far as I know, most of them don't have any kind of science background. So if you think you're going to be bored on the bench, it's probably not a great career path for you.
Okay, our next question. How heavily weighed are publications for government positions?
I think having publications is helpful. It shows that you're productive and you're thinking outside the box. You're able to put a product to paper and send it out for other people to review. But in terms of the actual weight, it's probably not all that great, at least in our field, or in firearms in particular, especially because I don't really do chemistry anymore. I have a few little chemistry things that I do, and beyond that, the past doesn't matter anymore.
Yeah, I think it's kind of expected when we hire PhDs that they're going to have at least 2 to 4 publications from grad school. But we also hire people straight out of undergrad, and I don't think they're ever expected to really have published anything. So it just kind of depends. And as I mentioned earlier, once people get hired, it's really just like a feather in your cap to get a publication, because it's definitely outside of the realm of your sample work, and getting it reviewed and going through the arduous process of just waiting for people to look at your work can be very discouraging to people. So a lot of times once people get to where we are, they just stop publishing. But most people with PhDs will start at usually a 12, and to go to a level 13 and then 14, you have to go through peer review. And to do that, you always have to have some publications, some big projects that you've worked on. So some people are fine staying at a 12, but everyone that wants to continue on will, get involved with some research projects.
Our lab definitely encourages it, although it's not a requirement. Typically what we would see in terms of publications are validations. So when a new method is validated, that will typically get published.
Okay, thank you. The next question is, in general, when you look at industrial positions, there's always a ladder to climb to higher roles. How do your roles in government compare to this? What kind of growth do you see in your roles in the near future?
Yeah, so as I mentioned where we are, I don't really have any interest in becoming a supervisor. I don't think I would have the personality to do that. So I am very happy being an analyst and working on all kinds of different samples and doing method validation and evaluating new technology. But I do get involved in a lot of research projects. So I've gone through peer review twice. So, that's something it gives you a little more opportunities to get involved in fun projects and to go to conferences and network with other agencies as well as universities. So it kind of depends. I previously was in industry for 4 years, and definitely the promotions and things like that were a lot faster in industry than they are with the government. So it kind of just depends.
Yeah.
And for me, I was fortunate to have a promotion very early in my career, but that was just a personnel. I was right place, right time, and the people that would have got it had already left. So I worked in a spot that was very fortunate.
It all depends on how fast your lab is growing. In a state police crime laboratory system, and it's probably very similar to other government organizations that have multiple locations. If you're at the main location, so at headquarters, for example, there's going to be more opportunities because it's just a bigger place. If you're at a satellite lab, there will be opportunities, but they are going to come by in a slower way. And similar to the FDA, there are people who come in and they're their whole career, so they'll retire out. So which is really cool, but also it does slow certain pathways down.
Okay. How often do you see people in your department staying career-wise? Do people stay for most of their career or move to other departments or organizations?
Almost everybody at the Forensic Chemistry Center stays. I would say 90% of people stay and retire.
We also have a very high retention rate. Usually within the first 5 years, if somebody's going to leave, that's when we'll do it. It's because they're figuring out what the job is and maybe realizing it's not for them or have other opportunities that arise. But most people ride it out to the end because it is very rewarding, and there are benefits available on the government level that you just can't find a lot of times in private industry anymore.
That's all true for our agency as well. But we do see a decent amount of movement between sections. So within the lab. So, for example, I was in seized drugs, and then I moved now I'm part of the quality assurance team. And people move analytically, to different sections as well. And so I think that's pretty cool. You can, if you want to try something different, hey, there's an opening in trace, I want to try that, or, and you can actually talk to the people who already work there. So we do see some movement there as well.
Thank you. The next question is, usajobs.com is a great method for keeping track of new postings of federal positions. Are there similar methods for state or local job postings?
For TBI, the easiest way to stay on top of it is if you go to Google. They've got a WordPress site, which I guess is like a blog website. I'm not very technical, so I could be totally wrong there. But if you type in TBI WordPress, it'll go to all of the press releases that our agents put out. And in there will also be the job listings that are open. So you can put your email in on that page, and every time you'll have to sift through all the, hey, we found all these drugs, or hey, we rescued this kid, or whatever. Eventually, whenever there's job openings, those will get delivered directly to your email inbox. That's for TBI. I'm assuming there's probably a lot of other agencies that are the same way.
Yeah, I think you kind of have to look agency specific when you're at the state level or county level. I just entered into the chat the civilian employment page for NYSP, and I'm gonna go grab, there's different organizations. So the American Academy of Forensic Science has postings as well. So if you join these, become affiliated with these organizations, especially if you're a student, you can get a discount. So you can sign up, you can join, and you can see those postings, but I don't think you even need to be a member to see that posting. So I'm going to see if I can pull it real quickly and drop it into the chat for everyone.
Okay. I think we have time for one or two more questions. So this question is, I was wondering what career opportunities in government for international chemistry graduate students who want to explore government roles in the US, which I think you discussed that a little bit earlier, but if you have any more to add to that.
Yeah, we have several people from Honduras, Colombia, Ethiopia, Puerto Rico, which is US, but Mexico. So we do have a lot of international people, but they're all US citizens, and they were before they started working.
Okay. If the other panelists don't have anything to add, I'm going to go back to the WUBA questions. What are the available job opportunities for a PhD in organometallic chemistry?
So my my PhD was in inorganic, so it wasn't strictly organometallic, but I did a lot of inorganic work, and now I do strictly mass spectrometry, and I learned most of the mass spectrometry that I know at the FDA. So I wouldn't pigeonhole yourself based on what you did in grad school, because you're very likely not going to be doing anything similar to that. So just play up, try to figure out what job you are applying to and figure out what you know that you could tweak to say, I've done that, and I'm interested in that, and I know a lot about that. Doesn't have to be exactly what you were doing in grad school.
I agree 100% with that. And definitely sell up your ability to think and apply that knowledge to problems. Not everything, once you get to the real world, it's a lot different than grad school, but the things you learn there can really help excel an organization in the right direction.
And I'd just like to add that we provide training for everyone, all of our analysts. So, and you have to become authorized incrementally on different instrumentation and different methods. So no one's expecting you to come in and be able to characterize a powder and see if it's cocaine. You're going to get the training for that. My background's in electroanalytical chemistry. So, not the same, but the same skill set. And, again, it's how you apply your problem solving skills.
Thank you. I think with that answer, we've answered one of the other questions in WUVA. So I'm going to ask the final question, which is, what advice would you have given yourself when you were a student or a current student that is interested in your field? If you could go back and take away one action item to do after predict, what would it be?
So if I could go back and tell myself 6-7 years ago, it would probably be, don't worry about what the other people in your lab think. That was a big hurdle that I had to get over. You felt like, at least I felt like whenever I was choosing a route that wasn't the academic world, I wasn't even if you're in a spot where people are disappointed, it's your life anyways. If you want to do something different, go do it. So that is the advice I wish I would have heard, like I said, 5-6 years ago.
Yeah, I totally agree with that. I would say my advice for myself would not be of the technical nature. It would be more of the personal nature of developing better coping skills. You know, there's a time to push through, and then there's also a time to take care of yourself so that you can really get through that marathon. So, and I'll freely admit I did not develop those skills until I was already in the professional world. And I wish I had taken the time and been gentler with myself and developed a healthier perspective.
Yeah, I agree with what both people just said. And I think for myself, I wish that I had taken advantage of more conferences and opportunities to network outside of my school. Because I feel like most of the good things that have happened in my career have been from people that I've met outside of my little bubble in grad school. And so the more people you meet, the more opportunities you're going to have, the more people you can bounce ideas off of, and the more friends you're going to make. So that overall has made me happier. And I wish I had been a little more outgoing when I was in school.
Well, thank you so much to our speakers. We are a couple minutes early, but I don't think we have time for a whole other question. So thank you again so much for everyone for coming, the attendees, as well as the speakers and the speakers of our last session as well. Thank you. Is there anything that you would like to add, Jade?
Thank you for your time, and feel free to reach out if you have questions or anything like that.
Yep, thank you for organizing, and thank you all for taking your time this afternoon to listen to us.
Thanks everybody for coming. I think Jade is having trouble on her side, so she can't actually unmute. So
I think
oh, there you go. Yeah, Jade, we can kind of hear you.
Am I here now?
Yeah,
okay.
Go ahead.
So I cannot get my video going for whatever reason. I think probably because I'm also recording. Anyway, just want to say a huge thank you to our panelists today, both from the government side of things and from higher education. We have posted any of the links that were in the Zoom chat into the Whova chat, so you'll have them on a more permanent platform. And lastly, I'd like to thank Kymeri and Mohammed for being awesome hosts and moderators for these sessions. And I would like to encourage everyone to come back and join us for the networking session tonight with Novashay. And that's it. Thank you all. Have a great evening.
Thanks, Jade. Thanks everybody.
Bye.
Thank you.